The American actor Alec Baldwin has fired a prop gun on a movie set, killing a cinematographer and wounding a director. A spokesperson for Baldwin just in the last hour or two said there was an accident on the set of the film Rust in New Mexico, and it did involve the misfire of a prop gun with blanks. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins died after being airlifted to hospital and was after she was flown to hospital, and the director Joel Souza was also being treated for his injuries. The incident is so shocking that for everyone involved, it's left us thinking, how could something like this happen? It seems so unlikely. And yet the truth is it's happened before. It's both happened in Hollywood not that long ago. The Gold Coast stuntman and actor Johann Offner died after a prop gun loaded with blanks was fired during the making of a Bliss and Esso video in Brisbane's CBD. So it sounds like a very similar case, a prop gun loaded with blanks and yet still fatal. Zoe Angus is the Director of Industry and Commercial at the Screen Producers Association, and she joins us here on Drive. Zoe, good afternoon.
Hi, Richard. Pleasure to talk to you, although perhaps not in these particular circumstances.
Oh, it just is terrible. How can this happen? I'm sure people are asking.
Oh, I agree. It's terrible, and my heart goes out to all of those on the film set. They would be, no doubt, absolutely devastated. I obviously, or indeed the safety protocols on that production. I can say things about the rules that apply in Australia.
My understanding in Australia, and you'll correct me, but isn't there supposed to be a guy or person called an armourer, and they're on stage, they're on the film stage all the time, together with a safety supervisor, and really it's their job to make sure this stuff doesn't happen?
Yes, absolutely. You're right. There's certainly some golden rules that we operate according to in our safety guidelines here. As you point out, the first one is that any firearms on set are under the supervision of a licensed, experienced armourer who's responsible for the handling, the loadage of those firearms. There's a couple of other key golden points that you never use live ammunition, even blanks, as it seems evident from this instance, we know can kill. Another golden rule, and flows from that last point, is that there should always be a test fire of any weapon.
Okay, so it should be fired before it's handed to the actor to make sure it's clear?
To make sure a couple of things. Certainly to make sure, in the first instance, you want to make sure that there's no live projectile coming out of that weapon. Some weapons, some firearms can be modified so that the barrel, so they don't actually release a projectile, but others can't. So a pistol can, but a shotgun, for example, can't because the barrels are too thin. So the first thing, the key point about having a test fire is you want to know what's coming out of, what the projectile, whether there's any projectile coming out of the weapon, but also for obvious reasons, you also want to do a test fire so that the actor becomes familiarized with with the recoil and the sound that comes out of a firearm, so that everyone on that set can then adjust angles and distances to make sure that that if there is travelling in to a safe destination.
Yeah, and so you are occasionally allowed to shoot blanks if necessary, but it's under those sort of very strict protocols.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, right back at the beginning of pre-production, the key people need to gather and work out what the nature of the stunt sequence is. And when I say key people, we're talking about a stunt coordinator, we're talking about a safety supervisor, we're obviously talking about a licensed armourer, and we're talking about the key people in crew, like the first assistant director, the cinematographer, who will all then work out how you safely sequence the scene, and then what needs to flow from that. And but you've got to be careful, obviously, about firing a blank indoors. Some weapons don't fire don't actually have a projectile. So all of these things need to be factored in to both the planning leading up to the scene and then obviously the way the scene itself is conducted safely on the day.
Yeah, and yet sometimes it goes wrong, doesn't it? Famously in 1993, Brandon Lee, who was the son of Bruce Lee, he died after being hit by a 44 caliber slug while filming a death scene for the movie The Crow. The gun was supposed to have fired a blank, but the autopsy turned up a bullet lodged near his spine. So there was that case. And it's not all in America. There was this case, as I mentioned, in January 2017, Johann Offner died. It sounds very similar to this business involving Alec Baldwin. It was a prop gun loaded with blanks. It was fired while they were making a video in the CBD, and something's obviously gone wrong there too.
Yeah, and there is, as you point out, there's an inquest currently part heard into what occurred on that music video set back in 2017. And, it raises obviously key questions for our industry to make sure that I'd probably say at the outset that the reality is that firearms are discharged or not discharged, but come to set hundreds of times a year on Australian screen productions. Two instances which are clearly shocking to us all. So there are proper ways to do it safely. It's just that there's a lot of, and one of the things I'd point out, I think that it's important in our safety guidelines, because you have to assume that, that humans are fallible, that there may be mistakes on set. So you need to build a system in place that builds in checks and balances. Mm-hmm. And the way we do it in our industry is that we allocate responsibility and roles to different people. So there will be, as I pointed out, there will be a licensed, experienced armourer on set who's responsible for the weaponry, the firearms themselves, and instruction and supervision, who's responsible for the safety and the sequencing of the stunt event itself and the actors involved in that process. There will be as well, in addition, in a hazardous sequence, there will be a safety supervisor who has sort of global responsibility for the safety on that set. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, in addition to that, there are then you've got the creative elements being retained by the director and the cinematographer, or the first AD. So it's important that these roles are sort of segregated, if you like, so that each can take responsibility for the various parts, and that acts as a check and safety, if you like, of checks and balances in the process.
That's right. Check, and check again. But even so, the woman who lost her life, but also the injured director, and as you said right at the beginning, imagine the trauma, Zoe, for all of those on set. Hey, thank you very much for talking to me and explaining how we do things here.
Thanks, Richard.
There's Zoe Angus, who's the Director of Industry and Commercial at the Screen Producers Association of Australia. As, this terrible news comes in that the actor, such a beloved actor, Alec Baldwin, has brought so much delight, I think, to people's lives through programs like 30 Rock. But, the story that he discharged accidentally a prop weapon and killed the cinematographer on his new movie and injured the director, all in New Mexico on the set of his film Rust.